Hi, Stroudsburg and Mountie Nation and students and faculty in Monroe County. Today, I'm honored to be on another interview. I know you've seen the series. We're back on with Pat McDonald. He's actually a Stroudsburg graduate, my first Stroudsburg graduate. So I really appreciate Pat coming on, a graduate from Stroudsburg, has a kind of inside look at what, he learned at Stroudsburg and what he's learned from Stroudsburg and Monroe County and applied to his career and his job. And I'm just going to kind of let Pat go and tell us what his career is, what the title of his job is, and just give a brief interview. But before I do that, Pat, I really appreciate you coming on today and taking the call. And without further ado, if you could just introduce yourself and give us your career title.
Yeah, sure. So Pat McDonald graduated from Stroudsburg High School in 2008. First, just big thank you, Clint, for putting this program together, because I know this is, when I was reading about it, this would be something I would have loved to have had when I was in Stroudsburg. So currently I work at UnderArmour down in Baltimore as our go-to-market systems manager, kind of like managing our internal catalog, where all the merchandising happens in UnderArmour. Yeah, been here 5 years. This is my second job at UnderArmour, and taken a lot of weird twists and turns already in like a young career. So kind of excited to share that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to get you on the call. I don't know a ton about your career. Obviously, we're personal friends. You know my wife, Sarah, very well, who's a teacher in the district. I met you through her. You officiated my wedding, so we're very close. I'm really, really happy to have you on, like I said, and I think you're going to give a good perspective to our staff and students. And so the next question would be, starting with high school and moving forward, kind of your career path. What got you on the track that you are to where you are now? Like, what interest did you have in high school that maybe spurred that? Maybe you didn't have anything that was really related to this in high school, but how did Pat McDonald become the person he is now at UnderArmour from high school to now? So what was your little journey in your career, I guess?
Little all over the place, but I guess always rooted in sports. I mean, the people that still know me in Stroudsburg know I was involved in. I played on the basketball team, soccer team. I did a little bit of like sports writing at some points. So still kind of rooted in that. But other than that, there's been a lot of like, not really that many connections from one stop to the next. So out of college, I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. And I really wanted to get into coaching. And so I started working a bunch of college basketball camps and where you meet a bunch of other people who are existing coaches or looking for new coaches. And at the end of that summer, I got linked up with Muhlenberg College, which is down the Lehigh Valley, not too far away. So I ended up being an assistant men's basketball coach there for 2 years. Kind of always my dream growing up to get into coaching. Still like to tell people I had an opportunity to go and be the graduate assistant at Villanova after that. And I didn't pursue it. I chose to go to graduate school in Baltimore instead. And then Villanova won the national championship that year. But ultimately, I still feel good about the move I made. So learned a lot from the coaching experience, a lot from recruiting and working with other families of other 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds looking to figure out what they wanted to do in life, which is really interesting. And also the whole financial aspect of it, with financial aid and how that works. But then also learned about like kind of the lifestyle of coaching and how it's, very far from 9 to 5. And while there's a lot of like perks to it and things that you get paid to do that you like to do, when your family and friends for the most part are free to hang out with on Friday and Saturday nights, that's when you're working, and different. So it's some people, are able to work through that with like their group of friends and family and have different priorities. And for me, I kind of learned that as much as I, enjoyed parts of it, I enjoyed being able to like be with friends and family, kind of on my own schedule. And that was kind of a big decision to change for me. So I went to grad school to actually get into career counseling, college counseling. And so I went to Johns Hopkins School of Education in Baltimore to pursue like a counseling degree. I thought I'd be like a school counselor and maybe get into coaching on the side still there. And then about a year into that 2-year program, when they had me doing some work in the actual local schools in Baltimore, it was cool to get involved, and I'm glad that's a part of the program where you have to, every Friday I went to this elementary middle school, and that was the most fun I had that year, actually getting to work with students. But it also kind of made me realize that I didn't really want to be working in a school, and kind of like, being in just like in a school. I wanted to be sort of in something that was like more of the business world. And it turned out my program had some flexibility where you could, it was part of the School of Education, but you can kind of incorporate education technology into the mix. So I kind of flipped a little bit and switched into a different certificate program where I learned about like learning technology. So a lot of learning management systems. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with now with the past year of online learning and Blackboard and, clicking through training portals and interactive online learning and things like that, and how get the tracking and all the data behind who's taken what classes and who's got what prerequisites for other courses that they need to first take. So kind of got into that world, and being down in Baltimore, had access to a lot of bigger companies and job opportunities down here, which is, we're not too far from DC. So in my second year of being in Baltimore, I got an internship with a company down in DC doing sort of that kind of work. And by the end of year 2, as that was kind of wrapping up, a job opportunity opened up at UnderArmour, who happens to be based in Baltimore. I like the area, it's still kind of rooted in sports. While I was getting my degree at Johns Hopkins, I was working as like an academic counselor for the athletic department. So I never really lost touch with the sporting world, and that seemed kind of like a nice fit. And UnderArmour thought so too, so hired me and did some more of that sort of like learning technology stuff for like employee training and things like that for a couple of years. And then since then, I've transitioned into my current role, which is managing the merchandising system. And there's some training aspects and still working a lot with people and observing how they use our tools or what they need to use. But it's, training is kind of like the 5th thing that happens on the list now, whereas it used to always be like the top of, what I was doing before.
Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of cool that, I know a lot of times when I was in high school, sports was a big thing. I love sports. I was an athlete. Obviously you were as well. And it's kind of like one of those pipe dreams, like I want to be a professional athlete, and what percentage of people do that? So then it's like, oh, well, maybe I want to teach people that are professional athletes or going to be professional athletes. And then you kind of just carried that dream alive with you, and you kind of, took it with you. And sports is a really big part of your life, and it's part of your career still. And I think it gives a lot of hope to our students who, might love sports, and you have to be realistic though. You might be a professional athlete. I'm never one to say that you're not going to make it, but if you don't make it, there are other avenues. So it's really cool and refreshing to hear, like, and especially for educators out there, like, don't discourage kids who are interested in sports. We need to learn about the careers as educators as well, to maybe, hey, maybe you want to be a professional athlete, or maybe you want to be a coach, but that didn't happen. So maybe you can do this. And that's really cool. And I'm excited that you brought that to my attention, because I didn't even know that. So
yeah,
great.
No, it's cool. Like there's a bunch, our CEO is famous for a bunch of like phrases and sayings, and they're all over the place, like on our walls and stuff. And one of them is like, it's a privilege to work in the business of sport, because like you said, there's, there are a lot of more different, weird avenues to be involved that you wouldn't even think of, because as we all grow up, we just want to be the one like hitting the game winning shot or, winning the championship. But it's cool. And for me, it's the best of both worlds, because I still, pretty much working 9 to 5 on Fridays, or on Monday through Friday, have my weekends, my free time. But I still get to kind of coach people at work and work with them that way, like I wanted to in basketball and other sports. And then, have everybody that I work with is pretty much drawn to their shared love for sports. Like one of our core values as a company, I think we have 4, is like we need to love all athletes, and you always put yourself in the shoes of like, what does the athlete want? And when we present at meetings, we talk about like, you know, if she's going to hit this, you know, to right field, her shoe needs to be able to have this type of mobility in the cleat. Like we talk from the perspective of an athlete, which is kind of cool because that's, you know, what I identify with.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think that's great, you know. So I mean, we could talk all day about that, obviously, but let's kind of, you know, like I said to you before we were recording, you know, we might have Pat back on to talk to, you know, specific students or something like that in the future. But, you know, we want to kind of give this as an overview for all students who might be interested in different career outlets. So I guess my next question to you, Pat, would be, because I don't know this, what does a typical day in the life of Pat McDonald at Under Armour look like? Like, what does your job look like? I'm sure every day is a little different, but if you can kind of give us like, you know, I wake up at X amount of, you know, X hour, and, you know, this is kind of what my day looks like. I obviously, you say you're not working weekends so much right now, and that's a good thing because you want to prioritize time with friends and family, which is great. And I think that's a good thing that you learned through coaching. So yeah, if you could just give us like what a day in the life of Pat McDonald looks like at Under Armour right now.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, normally my work day, it's nothing crazy. It starts around like 8:30 or 9. It's amazing, you know, all the kids in school at Stroudsburg start at 7 o'clock probably. So we start a little later, we go a little later. But normally in my role, I work with a lot of software providers, and a lot of them are not based in the United States or even this time zone. So I work really heavily with a group of guys that are in Dubai, who are 9 hours ahead of us. Sometimes of the year it's 8 hours ahead because they don't observe daylight savings. You just learn these little like nuances when you're working with people internationally. But my best opportunity to talk to them is in the morning, first thing in the morning, and that's the end of their day. And their weekend is Friday and Saturday. They work Sunday to Thursday. So like Monday through Thursday mornings is like start my day right off the bat with catching up with whatever they sent me overnight. And then I'm sending them, you know, that couple hours we have together, and then give them whatever they need for, you know, when I'm to sleep the next night. So there's that. And then, you know, it depends on whatever projects we're working on at the time. A lot of time it's working with our actual like merchandisers and like sales managers on some of the functionality in a system that they were trying to build to like enhance their experience. So it's kind of like website design and things like that, just more so internally, less for like people who like are just going, you know, if you and me wanted to go and shop for UnderArmour.com right now, it's more for internal, not external like that. So it's cool because my job, we get to spend a lot of time with people. And, you know, I don't necessarily have to be the one that's head down, like coding, you know, new stuff behind the scenes. We talk to the people that are going to use it. We interview them and so, like ask them what they were looking for. Sometimes we actually watch them try to do stuff and catch things that they wouldn't even know that they're telling us, but they are, you know, we see that they don't know where to click when they're supposed to find this next step of how to locate all the short sleeve, like Under Armour men's shorts in the golf line or something like that. So there's some observation and working with them. And in my role, I'm kind of like the bridge or like, you know, point that connects the pieces between our merchants and sales who are like really like fashion experts and really went to school for this stuff versus like our technology people who really went to school for that stuff. And you know, I'm not a fashion expert and I'm not an IT expert, but I know just enough from like talking to both sides that I can help kind of translate the conversations between them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool, man. Would have never known that was your career or that's what you did. But yeah, that's why we do these things is.
And I read some of your questions. I'm excited to talk about like the Stroudsburg stuff that I think actually prepared me for that. But I agree, like up until I had this job and like up until a few years ago, you know, I would have assumed that wasn't really a job. Like, no, the people that, you know, are the IT people that design things, they'll just go talk to like the people who sell Under Armour product. But there's definitely I've learned now, and it's great that, because I really like their job, is there's definitely a need for someone who actually spends the time to learn about, like, what do the people in sales care about the most? They have to hit their numbers. What do the people in merchandising care about the most? They need to make sure that we don't have too many long sleeve shirts at the $25 price point, because then they're not going to sell well. What do the people in IT care about? Like, and so if you kind of can learn about all the people involved and what motivates each of them, like, you do need somebody like that who understands that from everybody, as opposed to everybody out there just trying to do what's important to them.
Yeah, I think coaching probably really relates to that, because you're working with individuals so much. Like,
Yeah,
as a coach, I think I know you would know, and students out there who are interested in coaching, or teaching for that matter, you have to teach to the individual, and that's kind of what you're doing. You're talking to this group of people who's an individual, and they need things this way. This athlete might need things this way, so you have to relay it to them different, so that's really cool. Yeah, so let's just get right into that next question about, classes that you took at Stroudsburg that, prepared you for your future, and maybe even some classes that you wish would have been offered when you were going to high school at Stroudsburg.
yeah. So I was thinking about this. One of the first ones that sticks out to me was Mr. Sabrinsky's journalism classes, which I think are some electives, but some people got really into it. And I think it even flows into like the school newspaper club, if you want to get involved that far, or yearbook and things like that. I think I just took one of his classes. I'm not sure that I actually did the newspaper, but learning how to effectively communicate through that, and understanding like who is the audience. So like, who are you writing this for? What do they actually need to know? And I found that really helpful, because we actually had someone on our team walk us through this at work in sort of like a workshop for the rest of us. And he was a journalism major in college, and it brought back memories of taking that class. I forget the saying, but it's kind of like a pyramid approach. You start with, like, if you don't have time to read the entire article, you should be able to learn everything you really need to know about that story in the first paragraph in the headline. And that's the same way in business that you communicate in an email. That's the same way that you, like, if you need to speak up and provide an update in a meeting, you just need to, like, succinct, here's the facts. And if they want more information, like, you can have it ready for them, or you can be prepared to speak to it. But nobody has time for like a huge narrative about like your whole life story. So that was a big one that I thought was, looking back, like, I didn't even realize that I still remembered like the training that we kind of got in there, and it's very helpful. I think there's one class that I remember, like, in retrospect, I wish I would have taken. And I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but I did not take calculus in high school. And I don't really miss math. It was never my passion. I was the type of guy who kind of had, one day I wanted to be this growing up. The next day I wanted to be that. This day I'm going to major in this. The next day, I'm changing my major. And anyway, I was in a position, I'd taken like more so the advanced math classes, like not the genius classes, but like one level up, and could have taken calculus my senior year, and thought like, I don't need to, I'll just take whatever the easier version of like the next math class was. Basically that kind of shot me in the foot, because the next year I was interested in kind of doing some more like mathematical majors and keeping up with that, which I don't know if I would have done, but I do know from friends and others that have gone that route. It does open up a lot of doors and a lot of like lucrative careers. Basically, if you don't, what I learned in my experience is, if you don't take calculus in college, you're kind of like, you're way behind the eight ball. Or I'm sorry, if you don't take it in high school, you're way behind the eight ball to do anything math related in college. So that's a very specific one. And then I think I might say that maybe you guys even have this now, but I don't think there was anything, regarding like coding and stuff like that, software development. I think we might have had some basic like web design or, the typing classes and things like that. But I know that there are definitely other schools out there. I think my mom even told me, growing up in Scranton 40 years before me that they took like some coding classes there. So maybe those exist now at Stroudsburg, but I just, in order to kind of keep up, I think that's definitely what people need these days.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great, man. I think it's cool because like we talked about before this, we tell students, and students watching, I know we always do this as educators. We tell you, well, you need to take this class. Well, you need to take this. Well, there needs to be a why. Why do we need to take this class? And you're hearing it from a professional firsthand, how much the journalism class helped him, and how much, if you wanted to go into mathematics more, how much calculus would have helped him. So, just keep that in mind, when teachers are saying, you really need to take this class, teachers, I think we need to do a better job of explaining why. And that's one of the things that I want to help everyone do by bringing the professionals on to talk to our students. And students, like, you got to understand, your educators and teachers are here. We want to help you guys. We're trying to point you in the right direction. And another thing that really stuck out to me that you said was that you changed your major a lot, that you didn't, you were, every day was a new career choice. And I want students to understand that's okay. That's not a bad thing. I feel like too many times when something doesn't go right, we beat ourselves up about it and like, oh man, I really thought I wanted to do that, but I just failed. It's okay. Take it, learn from it, improve, like Pat did. He was a coach. How many years were you involved in coaching?
So for 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And then kind of helping out in academic liaison, academic coaching for another 2 years, and then in a new job at UnderArmour for like 2.5 years. Now I'm like 2.5 years into the other job, and those all bounced around. I mean, I changed my major in grad school. I changed my major undergrad like 3 times. So yeah. I appreciate this, and I think it's cool with some people that are just decisive, know exactly what they want, and go for it. I think it's great. I think there are some people that are more like me who, don't have that like end goal in mind right away. But I've kind of learned, like you were saying, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And my the best advice there, what I've learned is you don't need to know like what you want to be when you grow up. You don't need to know how it all ends in order to figure out what to do next. Just know what you're interested in and do that. Like, you just want to know what you want to do next. And then like when I got into coaching, I knew that was what I wanted to do next. And then I learned a lot through like how my head coach worked in his lifestyle that I never would have got to see. I learned a lot through like all the families that I interact with and like even what their careers were. So, we were recruiting a new point guard, and his dad worked in New Jersey as an engineer. His mom worked at some big business in New York City or something. And you get to talk to all these people. And like, that wasn't why I got into coaching, but because I got into coaching, just following my interest, you end up picking up on all these other like hints along the way. And then each stop along the way, like you learn more about what you want to do next. So that's what's really helped me. Don't try to figure it all out. Just figure out what you want to do next and go for it.
Yeah. And I would say with that, carry your experiences that you learned to your next career, like I think that's what you've done, and I think that's why you're successful, because you had those opportunities and you learned, how to work with individuals. And that's probably why you can dip your toes into a bunch of different things and be able to communicate between people that, don't know exactly how to communicate with each other. It's like, well, okay, I can figure this out, and that's awesome. It's awesome to see. So, I guess my next question and would be, we talked about classes, we talked about like your career path, but what skills would you want, like, or what skills do you believe that a high school student should be learning now? Or what would you look for if you were hiring someone at UnderArmour to help you in your position? Like, what are the skills that really, like, you really think are necessary to be successful in your career and in the future for our students in general?
So like general skills for like this generation, everything is rooted in technology, and it's going to be continued to be even more so rooted in technology moving forward. And which I think things are changing now with that, like with the type of technology used on a daily basis, like that changes every year. Every 5 years, like we remember not having cell phones. Like the people now can't like fathom that. And not to make us sound old, but man, I guess we're there. Um,
Yeah.
but so one thing I notice, like people I work with, people who do well with everything we're trying to like get them to do, is being open to change. And those people are the ones that get promotions for sure. Like those people are the ones who get it. And they also, like, because they come in with that mindset, they're always just ready to like knock out whatever, you know, comes at them. And they understand that like in order for us to be competitive with other companies and like just what's going on in the world, you got to understand like we got to be open to change. The people who don't want to change are the ones that end up getting upset all the time. They like lower the energy on a call or in a meeting because they're always complaining about something. And those aren't the people that end up, you know, getting a group of people that want to work for them and things like that. So technology, like without getting into specific, the technology in general and just being open to change. I'm trying to think. I also think so like when we interview people now, we often ask them, and a lot of times we are bringing in like young people right out of college, or you know they've only had like they've been working for like a year or two out of college, and then a lot of times at UnderArmour, at least, they one of the ways to get their foot in the door is they come and work at the call center. So when people are, you know, ordered some shorts online, or there's still a lot of like people in older generations, our parents, grandparents, who that's how they shop. So when they have questions, you know, that's where it goes. And that's where a lot of our like young workforce is. And then a lot of those people end up going from that job into like the business from there. That's how my boss got started. That's how a lot of the people I work with got started. And so when we interview these people, they're still mostly like in their early 20s. A lot of times we ask the questions of like, you know, tell us, nothing's ever perfect. Like we want to know how you handle bad situations. We want to know how you handle like when you got told to do something from one boss, but then somebody else told you to do something, like, what did you do about it? So I would say a skill set that I think is really valuable that I've learned personally, and that I've also seen, you know, people exhibit it and do well, is if you are trying to be like the right balance between being a go-getter or someone who can like figure things out versus like the right balance between that, and then also knowing when to speak up and be like, hey, you know, like I'm stuck here and I got to let you know, because if I don't let you know, it's just going to get worse. So the best way I've always seen to do it is be the person who, you know, goes through every possible resource. You're looking things up online. You're trying to think of all the notes you took to try to figure out something. And then if you're still not sure, or you don't want to, you know, hit the button that says like submit before you're sure, just double check, but double check with your boss or whoever, but tell them all the steps that you already did. So I checked here where you told me I could find the answer. I also asked this person and checked here. I'm still just a little bit hesitant. Like they will appreciate all that research that you've done, and be much more willing to be like, yep, you got it. Or like, you know, it's a good call. Like I didn't even notice that that's a tough question. We wrote that wrong or something. So just striking that balance. And lastly, that kind of reminds me of another one is I have to do this a lot in my job. We were talking about how it relates to the coaching world too, but learning how to put yourself in other people's shoes and like anticipate the type of questions that they're going to ask, you know, before you deliver something to somebody, like put yourself in their shoes and think like, okay, what do they want to actually know? And that all kind of comes back to that journalism class too, and how we really had to keep your audience in mind and all that. So all kind of comes full circle, I guess.
Yeah. So just to summarize those points, you know, the four big things that Pat touched on in my eyes were technology, making sure we're up to date and trying to get better at technology, which, you know, we definitely have to do at Stroudsburg, and students, you're probably more advanced than we are with that, which is great. Second thing would be like a growth versus a fixed mindset. Don't have a fixed mindset. Be willing to grow, be willing to change your opinion on things, be willing to listen, and adapt. The other one was to not be afraid to ask questions when you don't know an answer. Try to figure the answer out and try to critically think how to figure that out. But if you can't figure the answer out and you've tried and you've tried and tried, don't stress yourself out. try to find someone that can help you with that, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And then the fourth one, put yourself in other people's shoes. Be willing to understand that everyone's a little different. And we kind of talked about that before in another interview, which is great. And I think those are all four really, really key points. I have like three more for you, quick, Pat.
Okay.
The next one's kind of a two-parter. What is the most challenging thing of your job, or your least favorite part of your job? And then what is your favorite part? I know you said you really love your career. So what is like the most challenging, the part you don't love? And then what part is like absolutely like, oh man, I love this. This is why I wake up in the morning. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think the most challenging part has nothing to do with my specific job. It has to do with like any job you have, or even if you're still in school. It's like working or collaborating with people, or being around people who are kind of like just bringing the whole like all the energy down, kind of, you know what I mean? The people who are complaining and like are choosing to see things as in a pessimistic view. And so it's not necessarily specific to my job, but if you are, every time you have to reach out to someone for help, and then they have like certain people come back with like, you can just tell in the way that they word their response, they don't really want to help, or they aren't looking to be like a good partner, basically. So you kind of have to learn how to navigate that in whatever setting you're in, high school, college, teaching, coaching, business, whatever it is. And I would just say that like you can lead by example there, and it's contagious. Do the stuff, like manage your schedule well. If it's like you're in a better mood when you get up and work out early in the morning, or if you like to read and you like read a book, like do something in the beginning of the day that you like to do, because as opposed to like worrying about some big presentation you got like first thing in the morning, your presentation is going to go better if like you're in a good place before you give it, less about like cramming and things like that. The people that are always cramming and heads down, and those are the people who end up like they get stuck, and they don't have time to like recognize to be a good person to work with. And I always think that's the important thing.
Awesome. What about your favorite part of your career? So what do you really enjoy?
I mean, the opposite of that, I enjoy all the other people who are good to work with. But I kind of mentioned earlier, I really like working with people from different parts of the world and learning about people who have different levels of expertise in different areas too. I mean, just like you think of last year with COVID and things like that, you have like a weekly call with someone in Panama, in Hong Kong, in Amsterdam, where we have like regional offices, and just hearing about like how their government is handling COVID compared to ours. And it just every day working with groups like that and like an international company, it just helps you always like set your perspective. And you also just kind of feel the reach of like, what you're doing too. It's just a reminder that this isn't just like a store in Baltimore. Like there's people, if you watch English Premier League soccer, you got like stuff, in the fans, people are wearing UnderArmour and things like that. So I studied like international politics. I like to travel. I like when the world feels like a smaller place, because you just know people. And I really like the like international aspect of it.
Awesome. Yeah, possibly learning like different cultures and, things like that. That's awesome. Something I've never really experienced too much, but that's really, really cool that you get to do that on a pretty much like a daily basis, you said, with working with those guys in Dubai and things like that. So that's really cool. All right. So to tie everything up, our last question, and this is one I end with everyone. What is your advice to the younger generation, students in Stroudsburg and Monroe County, to be successful in their future? It doesn't have to necessarily be with UnderArmour, doesn't necessarily have to be with what you're doing with your career, but what advice would you give now that you're a professional, you've been in your career for a while, you're doing well, you're successful, I would say yourself, definitely have worked your way up in UnderArmour, and you're doing great things. So like, what piece of advice or what have you learned over the last, few years, or, that you can share with our students that like, listen, if you take this piece of advice with you today, I think you're going to be you're going to improve yourself and improve yourself for your career in the future.
Just keep an open mind, be open to changing and trying new things. And like, especially if when you're working with other people, which a lot of like the professional world and college on your way there does end up being with other people, be somebody that people like to be around. And that doesn't like, you don't have to be likable or like try to like do favors for people. Just like show up with a smile on your face and always, start with like, not necessarily that fake small talk, but like actual trying to ask them questions about what's going on and like with them. And then you get into the reason why you guys have to work together or something like that. Like we're all people before we are students or employees or anything like that. And the work and the school work, it all ends up going better if you guys want to be around like other people that you're working with. I know that's kind of like a little bit of a theme I mentioned earlier. I feel like that's a big one. I also we didn't really touch on this, but I'm like very proud of being from the Stroudsburg area. It's not perfect by any means, no place is, but we got a lot of exposure to different types of people in Stroudsburg that I've learned growing up. Most other people, like none of the other people are really used to that. And that's a huge advantage, honestly, especially if you're going to be involved in a career with like working with other people. You learn about people from different backgrounds and how to like coexist with them in a school and a community. I would just like, you don't realize it at the time because you just show up every day and that's what life is. But if you leave and go somewhere else, you go to college, that's not what it's like there necessarily. And it's definitely not what it's like for most of the other people that are going to college or work wherever you're coming from. So I would just like appreciate that and try to get involved when you're going into college or when you're still in high school. Don't be someone who just like goes to class and then goes home. Like the biggest opportunities are like all the extracurricular activities that you have access to. And even if you're not sure if you'll like it, just like try it. That's the beauty of the extracurricular activity. Like you don't need to make it your life or career. You can like try it for a semester or for a school year. And you'll learn something that you like about it. You'll learn something you don't like. But from that one, you might learn like something else you want to try. And I think like once you get past high school and college, the extracurricular activities that are just free and available for you right in front of your face, they come a little harder to find, and it's much easier just be someone who sits at home like after work and watches TV. So you can like find a lot of passions and hobbies and things like that now, and like while you're young. And I would encourage people to leverage that.